deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
I'm so grateful for the things that I'm able to do.
I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
There was a time not long ago when Rachel Zegler looked like she was about to become one of Hollywood's next big stars. Handpicked by Steven Spielberg out of tens of thousands of audition tapes to lead West Side Story, celebrated with a Golden Globe win, and cast in multiple high-profile roles with major studios. She had the whole world in front of her. But today, her name is barely whispered in industry circles. Her face is missing from marketing materials, and insiders have confirmed the whispers are true. Rachel Zegler is unofficially blacklisted from Hollywood. But how does that happen? How does someone rise so fast and fall even faster? The truth is, it didn't happen overnight. Rachel didn't just stumble, she repeatedly tripped over her own pride. And the industry, known for having a short memory for failure but a long one for arrogance, quietly closed the door behind her. Rachel's career began like a fairy tale. No small roles, no years of struggle, no second-rate projects. She leapt right into the lead of a Spielberg film, a modern retelling of a beloved classic. Critics praised her performance, and the media rushed to crown her the next great talent of her generation. She was young, articulate, talented, and seemingly poised to be the face of a new era in film.
Just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business.
Babe, what business do you mean?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie.
A lot of what you see with Zegler is really just a pretty common Gen Z mentality.
Not to add fuel to the Rachel Zegler Oscar fiasco,
But why did they have these women, all Disney princesses, all stated as Disney princesses?
Rachel Zegler is the prime example of how you should never think that you're bigger than the project. The only excuse I can make for her is that she's young, she's immature, she doesn't know any better.
You took on the role, and that job comes with certain basic responsibilities. And one of the most basic is the responsibility to control yourself and comport yourself a certain way publicly so that you don't harm the project, thereby harm all the hundreds of other people who are working.
But behind that glossy PR veneer was a growing problem. Rachel believed her own hype. She didn't just accept the praise, she inhaled it, internalized it, and transformed it into a platform to lecture, criticize, and condescend to the very audience that was supposed to embrace her. She didn't want to play the roles fans loved. She wanted to tell them why those roles were wrong. The real turning point came with Disney's Snow White. Cast as the titular character in a live-action remake, Rachel was given one of the most iconic roles in cinematic history. This was her chance to become a household name. Instead, she became a symbol of Hollywood's disconnect. In interviews, she didn't just offer a modern take on the story, she tore the original to shreds. She called the prince a stalker, mocked the central love story, and described the 1937 animated film as outdated and irrelevant. She even said her version of Snow White wouldn't be dreaming of love, but of leadership. It was more than a creative update, it was a cultural rejection, and fans didn't appreciate it. They weren't angry that a new version was being made. They were furious that the actress playing Snow White didn't seem to respect the character at all. Rachel wasn't promoting a film. She was waging a campaign to fix something people didn't think was broken. The backlash was swift. Disney forums exploded. Online threads piled up. Merch featuring Rachel began disappearing from stores. Marketing shifted slowly, but deliberately away from her face. Internal reports leaked that Disney was pulling back from her, delaying the film, re-editing trailers, and even considering reducing her screen time. That's when the blacklisting began, not through formal memos, but through strategic silence.
Jeff and Amy were reading lines, and then our director Mark Webb on Zoom was like, you know, and then Dopey's gonna look at you and whistle. And I took a pause and realized what I was auditioning for. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. But it was very sweet. And it was a very short audition process for me. Difficult question. Scar. Love Scar, because that's like some pure evil. Like, he really, really kills that guy. He kills Mufasa. That's crazy. Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame, because it's really nasty, because it's about like very real things. And then Hades from Hercules. I have to pretend like, oh God, well, crazy that we're in front of this.
Wait, how often are you in line for the Snow White ride?
I'm a narcissist. I don't know. It's always like my publicist Ashton was with me the last time it happened, and I was like, God, I hope no one, because every time they come up to me, I'm always online for this freaking ride. Focused on becoming the leader that her father tells her that she can be, and she's really trying to find the courage to stand up to the evil queen and how to find her own agency and rule a kingdom. And she meets so many incredible people along the way, and maybe she finds love, maybe she finds friendship, but really what's important is that she finds her own voice.
Studios stopped bringing her up in planning meetings. Publicists stopped offering her for interviews. Writers stopped including her in shortlists. The industry, which thrives on image and predictability, began seeing Rachel not as a promising star, but as a liability. Not because she wasn't talented, but because she was unpredictable, polarizing, and unapologetic. And it wasn't just about one movie. Rachel's behavior became a pattern. During her Broadway run in Evita, she made headlines not for her singing or acting, but for bizarre stunts like singing to fans outside the theater while paying audiences sat inside watching her on a screen. The show started with ticket prices over $500. Within weeks, it was pay what you want. Some nights it was free. What was meant to be her stage comeback turned into a public humiliation.
Everyone on West Side Story has so much stuff. Ariana DeBose has like a poster from the set. I have nothing.
That's amazing.
I have nothing.
You have
from my
memories.
first movie. I do.
And
I have memories. I got a boyfriend out of it. Like,
that's a lot.
You got the boyfriend.
You took something from the set.
Yeah, I got a boyfriend. I got a best friend.
Yeah.
Critics didn't attack her voice, they questioned her judgment. Why would someone perform to the street while the paying crowd sat disappointed inside? Why were people who paid nothing getting the best view? Rachel never answered. She didn't even acknowledge the controversy. To her, it seemed everything was art, no matter how confusing or frustrating it was for the people watching. Then came the political posts. Rachel began unloading on social media, lashing out at entire groups of people with divisive language. She didn't just share her views, she attacked her own audience. She said she didn't need their business. She declared she hoped certain voters would never find peace. And while Hollywood is no stranger to political activism, Rachel's tone was different. It wasn't advocacy, it was aggression. Even those who might have shared her views began distancing themselves. Because in Hollywood, message matters, but so does delivery. And Rachel's delivery wasn't inspiring. It was hostile. Publicists couldn't control it, producers couldn't spin it, and fans couldn't ignore it. Insiders began to leak what many suspected. Rachel was no longer being considered for lead roles. Her name, once a draw, now triggered hesitation. Streaming platforms began requesting A/B testing, running trailers with her name and without it. The ones without her performed better. One executive, speaking off the record, said, "She sparks debates, not excitement. She's exhausting." The whispers grew louder, and still, Rachel said nothing. No course correction, no apology, no reflection, just more content, more sarcasm, more, "I don't need you" energy. She didn't just fail to reconnect, she refused to. And Hollywood, with its endless supply of new talent and fresh faces, decided to move on.
I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again. So I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years. Fun fact, I didn't get to watch it. I didn't see it. I have no idea what everybody was reacting to, but I saw the logo and I got really emotional. I also heard everybody like screaming and I got really excited, which means they must have liked it. But I know how I felt making it, and so hearing everybody's reception of it being so excited and screaming and cheering is so, it just fills your heart with such gratitude. Really, it does.
And singing all week, how is Snow White going? You're starring in Snow White, the new version. How's it going?
It's going really, really well. We're having so much fun on set. It's so magical. And every day I'm just pinching myself that I'm a freaking Disney princess. It's so stupid.
Rachel Zegler had become the kind of name that gets people nervous in meetings, not because of scandal, not because of controversy, but because of fatigue, because no one wanted to deal with the headache of explaining her comments, her decisions, or her unpredictable behavior. In an industry built on image, she became a risk no one was willing to take. What's even more shocking is that Rachel never seemed to notice. Or if she did, she pretended not to. She carried on as though nothing was wrong, offering smiles, posting videos, and occasionally dropping cryptic lines about being misunderstood. But the energy had changed. The support was gone, the buzz had vanished, and the opportunities had dried up. Rachel Zegler had effectively blacklisted herself. The final straw came when even her fan base started turning. At first, they defended her, then they apologized for her, then they went silent. Online communities once filled with praise now brimmed with disappointment. People didn't hate her, they were just tired of defending someone who made it so hard to root for her. And here lies the most important lesson. Hollywood isn't just about talent, it's about connection, about humility, about understanding that you are only as powerful as the people who show up for you. Rachel forgot that. She thought she could outsmart the system, talk over the fans, and redefine the roles she was hired to play. But the system didn't budge. The fans walked away, and the roles disappeared. Today, Rachel's name barely shows up in casting rumors. Her face is missing from major campaigns. Her projects are either delayed or quietly scrapped. And not because of a scandal, but because of her own decisions. She alienated the industry with her attitude and exhausted the audience with her detachment. No one is out there trying to ruin Rachel Zegler's career. No shadow campaign is working against her. What happened is simple. Hollywood got tired of her. The fans got tired of her. And when that happens, there's no comeback tour, just silence. In another time, she might have been able to turn it around. All it would have taken was an apology, a moment of honesty, a hint of gratitude, but she couldn't do it, or wouldn't. And now the doors are closed, not locked, not bolted, but closed. And in Hollywood, that's all it takes. Rachel Zegler's blacklisting wasn't swift, it wasn't loud, it was slow, quiet, and final. 1,000 small decisions, 100 missed calls, dozens of projects she'll never hear about. That's how it ends, not with a scandal, but with a whisper. So for every rising star out there watching, take note. Talent opens the door. Attitude decides whether it stays open. Rachel had all the talent in the world, but she forgot the one rule you can't break in show business. Never act like you don't need the audience, because one day the audience might believe you. As Rachel Zegler's name continued to fade from Hollywood's conversations, the fallout behind the scenes became clearer. The industry's silence wasn't just about avoiding controversy, it was about risk management. Executives began viewing Rachel not as a star, but as a potential crisis. And in a business where one tweet can cost millions, that kind of perception is career-ending. Casting directors once excited to work with her started quietly removing her name from consideration lists. Not because she couldn't deliver a performance, but because the baggage was no longer worth the reward. For every minute of screen time she could bring to life, there was an hour of media cleanup waiting in the wings. Nobody wanted to gamble on that kind of energy. Even among agents, her name became radioactive. New talent was easier to pitch, easier to market, and far more cooperative. Rachel had crossed the invisible line where studios stopped thinking, how can we promote her, and start thinking, how do we explain her? And that's a death sentence in a town obsessed with optics. One insider put it bluntly, she made herself a problem. And in an industry with thousands of replacements, being difficult is a fast track to being ignored. Not hated, not shunned, just omitted. Quietly, efficiently, and completely. The streaming world, once a haven for controversial figures, also backed away. Netflix, which had considered her for 2 projects, passed both times after initial meetings. Amazon Studios, initially bullish about pairing her with a major director, pulled the plug after market testing. The analytics were brutal. Viewers consistently reacted negatively when her name appeared. Meanwhile, audience perception surveys began circulating within studio marketing departments. The results painted a bleak picture. Rachel's favorability scores had plummeted. Viewers didn't describe her as fresh or exciting. They used words like arrogant, detached, and out of touch. When asked if they were likely to see a movie just because she was in it, the overwhelming answer was no. That's when brands began stepping away too. A fashion house that once featured her in a campaign quietly dropped her from upcoming promotions. A cosmetics line postponed their partnership indefinitely. Sponsors don't wait for things to get worse. They act the moment the data shifts. And for Rachel, the data had collapsed. But perhaps the most telling sign of all came from award show season. Not only was Rachel not invited to present or perform, she wasn't even mentioned in pre-show predictions. She wasn't a contender. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't even a whisper. The same industry that once celebrated her debut with standing ovations now moved forward as though she never existed. Rachel's management team, reportedly frustrated by the growing frost around her name, attempted a rebrand. They pitched her for indie dramas, thought-provoking roles that might earn her redemption through artistry, but producers balked. Not because she wasn't capable of the performances, but because the audience wouldn't come. No matter how good the movie might be, people just didn't want to see her in it. They also tried to reposition her as a musical powerhouse, suggesting concert specials or album releases, but here too, the response was lukewarm. Even major labels, often more forgiving of public missteps, weren't interested. The voice is great, one executive admitted, but the narrative is just too messy. What's most tragic is that Rachel didn't lose her voice or her acting chops. She lost the room. That intangible feeling where people root for you, where the public is willing to give you another chance. And without that, talent becomes irrelevant. People won't buy the ticket, they won't press play, they won't care. Her social media presence didn't help. Instead of pulling back, recalibrating, or engaging in damage control, Rachel continued her usual tone, sarcastic, confrontational, and emotionally distant. She wasn't evolving, she was doubling down. Every post felt like a dare to her critics. And while that might energize a small group of loyal followers, it alienates everyone else. The entertainment press took notice too. Once hesitant to criticize rising stars, publications began running more honest headlines. What went wrong with Rachel Zegler? From darling to dismissed. The fastest fade in Hollywood? These weren't hit pieces. They were postmortems. The kind you write when someone's career is no longer a maybe, but a was. Entertainment journalists who once sang her praises were now openly questioning her choices. They weren't rooting against her. They were trying to understand what went wrong. And the answers kept circling back to the same thing. Rachel had burned every bridge that mattered, and she never tried to rebuild them. Her last major studio appearance came and went with barely a mention. No interviews, no red carpet, no media tour. It was as though the studio had agreed to fulfill a contractual obligation, but nothing more. And after that release, the phone stopped ringing entirely. Even her representatives felt the shift. Calls went unreturned, emails went unanswered. At meetings, the conversation would change when her name was mentioned. It wasn't personal, it was practical. Studios wanted smooth productions, bankable stars, and headlines that helped, not headlines that hurt. Rachel, whether she realized it or not, had created a career path filled with warning signs. She alienated the fans who wanted to believe in her. She frustrated the creatives who wanted to work with her. And she confused the executives who once saw her as the future. What could have been a legendary career arc, rising from an unknown to a generational talent, had become a lesson in how quickly Hollywood can move on, especially when you give it a reason to. And that's what makes Rachel's story so unique. It's not that she made one big mistake. It's that she made a series of small ones, arrogant interviews, tone-deaf statements, performative gestures, and never stopped long enough to ask, am I losing people? By the time she looked around, the room was empty. Her fans, once vocal and supportive, became quiet. The hashtag stopped trending. The YouTube reaction videos moved on to other stars. Comment sections shifted from support to satire. And while a few diehards remained, they couldn't carry an entire career. Behind closed doors, her team started downsizing. Her schedule became lighter, offers dried up, appearances were postponed, projects entered development hell. It wasn't dramatic, it was deliberate, a quiet distancing from someone the industry no longer saw as viable. And yet, despite all this, Rachel still acted as though she was misunderstood. She hinted that her critics were just trolls, that the world didn't get her, that she was just being real. But authenticity without accountability isn't admirable, it's reckless. And in an industry built on perception, that's the one thing you can't afford to be. Producers began developing similar projects, fairy tale reimaginings, musical dramas, and character-driven biopics, but without Rachel. They found other actresses, ones who smiled during press tours, ones who thanked the fans, ones who didn't treat every interview like a battlefield. Rachel became the example they didn't want to follow. Even charities and nonprofits, often a last refuge for controversial figures, stopped inviting her. Not because they disliked her, but because they knew the headlines would distract from their message. And that's when you know someone has truly been blacklisted, when even good causes can't afford the association. Her absence became so noticeable that people began creating compilations. Where is Rachel Zegler now? Why Hollywood cut ties with Rachel? The fall of a star. Entire documentaries were pieced together by YouTubers chronicling her decline, and the overwhelming sentiment wasn't anger, it was disappointment. People wanted Rachel to win, they wanted to see her succeed, but she didn't just fumble the ball, she spiked it on her own teammates, over and over, until there was no team left. And now, Rachel Zegler lives in the shadows of what could have been. The star that once sparkled on Spielberg's red carpet is now a ghost in the background of forgotten projects. Her name isn't controversial, it's irrelevant. And in a town that thrives on buzz, that's the worst fate of all.